Welcome everyone to the January art. Welcome and Happy New Year. Our artist today is painter and California native Kim Lordier, who received her Bachelor of Fine Arts degree from the Academy of Art University, San Francisco and University of San Francisco. Flight attendant, competitive horsewoman, and artist, her career path varied until the events of September 11, 2001, when she committed to her life's work as an artist. Lordier's art examines the patterns of nature and how light transforms the mood of an environment. Known for utilizing rich color and tapestry-like effect in her mark making, Kim weaves her spiritual relationship with the outdoors into her work. After 2 decades of painting the Western landscape from life and in the studio, Lordier brings her lifelong passion for the horse into her compositions. Fascinated with the strength and grace of the horse, she conveys their power and gentility by painting them in their surroundings. Whether portraying working stock, performance horses, or wild mustangs, Lordier reflects on the kindred spirit of these beautiful creatures and their relationship to man. Lordier's paintings are in private and public collections throughout the country and have been exhibited in many museums. So it is my pleasure to present to you Kim Lordier, pastel artist.
That actually sounds pretty good. Thank you very much, Jim. I really appreciate it. And
you're welcome.
To SWA for this wonderful opportunity. And I appreciate all of you guys braving the weather to come out here and see me attempt to paint from life in front of you guys. The topic today is how I approach painting snow and how I like to make it glow. And we the mic on her. Are lucky here in the Bay Area that we have an emotional tie to snow where we get to see it in the beautiful mountains, but we don't have to shovel it. Snow, when I get the opportunity to be in the snow, I always think of it as a playful time. You know, you're either skiing or hiking or, you know, observing the bird out there. And so it's always been an element of play on a quiet, snowy afternoon. You know, it just gets quiet and soft and gentle and just feels like you can almost float out there. And so for me, snow is quite emotional, and I enjoy painting it also for artistic reasons. You know, when you see a nice big blanket of simplify the landscape for us. So we have this nice even plane of light value, and a lot of times the sky's a little bit darker in value, and it gives us an opportunity to play. And those are some of the reasons why I love painting snow. Let's see, I brought some notes here. What I plan to do, is just talk to you briefly about what I've got going on here, and I'll be referencing a couple of the paintings that I brought here as well. I'll be painting in pastel today, and I'll be doing an underpainting process. So I've created my design pretty quickly here. You probably noticed this round circular thing that has nothing to do with my design. It just happened to be, I'm working on a sanded surface that I stained with a sepia colored acrylic. So I get this nice, lovely middle value tone to my ground. And in order to keep the board from kind of starting to buckle, I place heavy items on top of it. And the circle is just a coffee cup that was full of stuff. So ignore I'm not gonna, it's not a target. I don't plan, hopefully I'll be successful to cover that up by the end of the session. So what I'll talk about my design briefly, my reference briefly. Then I'm going to go ahead and prepare the underpainting. I'll get the underpainting done. It'll take 5 to 8 minutes, maybe 10, because it's cool in here in this environment. And I'll go over some of my tips for painting snow that I've written up for you. Does that sound like a plan? Okay. So I have my reference photo. If you guys can see, I don't know where to go with the camera. I have a couple photographs from Bear Creek, which is in just outside of Denver in the Rocky Mountains. And what I loved about this scene was this nice movement of water, which I love to paint water and reflections as well. And I think this will be a good opportunity to explore sun in or snow in shadow and in sun, and then how I make the snow glow. There's a lot of abstract patterns going on in the reference photo that I'm using. I did take the photo dropped it into Photoshop because there was a large rock there that I wasn't. That's cool. There's a large rock on that I wasn't interested in painting. And I use my photo reference just as a simple guide. Once I look at the photos or when I'm painting on location as just a simple guide of rhythm and movement and dark and light. That's how I think when I'm out there on location or in the studio. So there was, I don't know how to get rid of that. So what I was attracted to with this particular photo, like I mentioned, was this vertical or this horizontal movement moving through the picture plane. The reeds that are these upright reeds will be a fun accent to create. And then there's going to be just this dark mass back there of stuff. And that's how I think of it. Instead of painting trees or rocks or, reeds, I like to just think of it as abstract shapes and beautiful colors next to each other that hopefully will come and create a whole image. Any questions about what I've started? How many people are pastelists here? Okay, we got a fair amount, and then we have I know acrylic and oil. So the concepts I'm going to be talking about, in terms of light and dark and color relationships, temperatures, relate to all mediums. And same with composition. Are there any questions about what I've got started here? Yeah. Great. So when I do my initial sketch, it's a new pastel generally. And they're long, for those of you who are not pastels, they're long, hard pastels. And it's easier to kind of get a nice drawing in or light sketch with that. I've also used the same new pastel here. I started the sketch yesterday, just in preparation for here, because it takes a little bit, because we're condensed in time here. And so this is kind of a deep green color that I created the dark shapes with, and then I just came in. I just wanted to place, because I did the initial sketch yesterday, then if I came at it today with just the dark marks, I'd be a little bit lost. So the orange will all get covered up pretty much in these next couple steps. So the new pastel, I'm going to go ahead and add a few more colors, and then I'll find my color palette right now, and then I'm going to take Turpenoid and a bristle brush, and then I'm going to wet everything. Bless you, Leona. And so I'm going to just take a couple minutes to find my colors, if that's okay, and then I'll get back to you. And you're welcome to ask questions at any time. So are you talking about? Yeah. So that's actually pastel. It's not acrylic.
Oh, I thought you said you painted the board.
Oh, the surface?
Yeah.
Yes. So I use a tea stained acrylic paint that's the consistency of tea. and just wipe it on and let it dry so that this is a sanded surface. It's a UArt. It feels like sandpaper for those of you who don't paint in pastel. And and that I just let that dry. Okay, so I'm going to approach this right now. I'm going to kind of use the reference to make my a few color suggestions. Oh, I forgot. I also did a little bit of a color study to very like this is about 10 minutes of trying to find a few colors. There's some color harmony back here that's not working for me, but I hope to resolve that here. So I should probably keep that posted up. So I'm just going to drag. Now I'm working super light. And my shapes are very generalized right now. There's not a whole lot that's very, very specific and hard made decision because unlike if anybody's here for Paul Kratter's demo last month or a couple months ago, he's very specific about creating his beautiful thumbnail sketches and going from there to his painting. And I'm freer about how I approach it. I think I react to if I'm out on location more. I'm less of a planner and more of a reactor to what I'm seeing. So I've got my basic shapes, but that's not necessarily where I plan on. My edges will stay very organic until later on in the painting process. I'm gonna get a little bit of a. So right now I'm just feeling what's happening with some of this stuff up here. I'm just trying to get these subtle color temperature shifts from a warm green to warm brown, and that's going to cool off as things go off into the shadow area. And I want to describe, I'm going to talk very specifically about what shadow on snows and photograph, working from photos and creating shadows on the snow and what they do. My light source is coming from the far left and behind me and coming this direction. You can see how on my photo reference, whatever's casting these shadows. So there's a lot going on here in these shadows. I'm going to keep the majority of this corner in shadow so that when I go to create my lights, they're going to be a little bit more, I'll be able to, I like to find things instead of plan them out. And it'll keep the information, it'll keep my shapes simpler. There's some shadowy stuff going on back there. In my reference, again, it's pretty much, you know, the river is frozen over in these sections here. What I like is when you see the ice, and sometimes the ice is really thin and you see the beautiful colors and the transitions from the water to the ice to the more heavy laden snow. So I'm going to create hopefully that effect with you in some of these places instead of just having this white snow. Much like you know, these iced over areas, and this is where the snow starts to build up along the edges of the snow bank. And same with here. I love trying to create the textures going on in those. So I'm gonna improvise with from my reference. see. We've got some, I'm gonna have some things in shadow in the back here. A little feeling of bit of that in here. Again, this is all just very lightly placed in here. Because I'm going to wet all this material. And I want to get my darkest darks. I'm going to try my best to keep my darkest darks back up in here so that I keep a simplified idea. So this will be my kind of my ground or my anchor for all this light and movement traveling back into space.
Kim, are you still using the new pastels for that?
No, I am now using, that's cool. I've gone to my my dry pastels or my Terry Ludwig's and my other regular pastels. And I'm again putting this in very lightly. And I'm just thinking about this. I'm not thinking trees. So often when people are working with their photo reference, they're thinking, I must make tree trunk. And then all of a sudden tree trunk becomes that. And see how much power that hard, crisp edge. What I want to have happen is I want to find this rhythm and movement back here with the general shapes first, general textures first, and then when things start to feel like the items that they are, whether they're bushes or trees, tree trunks, I'll find where they need to be within. I make a lot of stuff up. Thank you, everybody from Zoom land who are here too. It's kind of cool.
42 of them.
Oh, wow. Well, thank you guys. I'm honored. I'm going to keep that in shadow too. See what happens here. Sunlight. Let's make this ice stuff a little bit thicker too. So what I noticed when I had brought my original drawing and set it up here, that I had this section, and this section were all the same width. And that's not as exciting. You know, when you're thinking about abstract shapes, you want to have a variety of sizes. And so that's one of the things I wanted to make sure I changed. All right, I'm going to go ahead and go to the so this is terpenoid. It's not the natural terp. It's odorless terpenoid. Thank you. And the natural stuff doesn't dry. So if you're using Gamsol for the pastel, it won't dry. I need the non-natural, almost the real turpentine to create this, so it dries in enough time. The Gamsol works great for oil painters, but not so much for this underpainting process when you want it to dry and you want to get after it. I use this sometimes or a lot when I'm out on location as well. But when it's rainy like this and pretty much below 55 degrees, then I'll use denatured alcohol because it'll dry much faster. There's many different ways to create an underpainting. Some people do a watercolor underpainting. Some people will do use a tea-stained oil painting as an underpainting. People do complementary color underpainting. So they would take, this would all be red under here, you know, underneath the green. And these shadows would be a darker orange. And then people would put cooler colors on top of that. There's many different ways of going about this. Sometimes I'll just do a monochromatic underpainting. Okay. So I hate that mark that I made. I utilize the side of much like an oil painter, and use my my brush to create texture and movement. Again, I'm not thinking this will be tree, this is the branch, this is the leaf. I'm using my brush in a manner that is indicative of the gesture of what it is that I'm painting. So I'm not thinking things, I'm thinking shape and pattern and texture. I'm wishing I hadn't used those orange spots to remind me of where I wanted the movement of grasses. I'm going to keep all this back here pretty ambiguous. I want it to kind of meld in. So I'll find my shapes. I want this to be pretty abstract in its feel, so that I can then bring the rhythms of that water, the feeling of the water in and out. And I got to remember that I'll have some of these marks of this larger willow or not willow. The grass. But you can see I didn't really put that much pastel dust or pastel on. And it's spreading, it's doing a great job of spreading tone into my dark shapes here. the bristles of my brush ended up curling in my bags. That's not normal. They're usually flat. So it's creating a little bit of a interesting effect, my mark making here. This is always the fun part for me. It's kind of a, I start envisioning being in the space while I'm just being kind of gestural with all this, particularly when I don't have people watching me. I start envisioning, oh, what's happening here? Oh, how thin is the ice? These are things that I'm thinking. While I'm even at this stage, what does the ice feel like? How crunchy is it? How thin is it? What would it sound like if I stepped right here where the snow is thicker? How deep would my foot go down into, I'm thinking that while I'm painting. And then when you're out on location painting, you literally know. Now notice, I'm working on a middle value surface. My ground is a middle value, my canvas or whatever you want to, whatever you're working on. And I haven't put any white down here yet. And I probably won't put any white on until right at the very end. And I'm going to share with you my reasoning behind that. Okay, that circle's got to go bye-bye. That circle was not part of the plan. So I want to make sure, even in my photograph out here, it starts to get really light out here, but I want to make sure I don't have anything super light out in this area. I want to keep our eye right in here. So I'm going to put a little bit more shadow value over on that side to remind myself that I don't want anything out there that's that light in value. Am I putting you guys to sleep yet? It might happen.
You ever work with music?
Always. Yes.
The silence kind of. Silence is kind of loud.
It's weird. I agree. Yeah, I always, and a lot of people will paint to to books or to listening to podcasts. And when we were hauling horses cross country, I'd be with my trainer and she would listen to stories on tape, and it would put me to sleep instantly. And then when I was behind the wheel, I had to crank up the tunes because I can't listen to words while I'm concentrating on something else. But music is completely different because I mean, I literally dance when I'm in the studio. I mean, you probably saw me walking back and forth, and before I got started, that's a pretty. And then I always have a mirror right behind me, so I'll be painting and I'll look in the mirror and then I'll be on. And then I go back at it, right? So it just kind of, yeah. And then I'll listen to, blues, rock, Jill Scott, R&B, all kinds of stuff. So I think I'm to a point. Let me stand back here and see what I've got here. So you can kind of start seeing what's happening. It'll all dry lighter. And I'm going to go ahead and read some of my tips. which will be boring to listen to, but then I'll hopefully illustrate some of it. So another thing in my reference that I'm not crazy about, see how heavy and dark this shape is in the lower left corner. I want to make sure that I don't have anything that dark and heavy down there either, because just like I mentioned on the right-hand side, if I have super light value out here, it's the same thing as having something really dark in the middle. But what I do like about this movement is how it helps to lead your eye into the painting. And so some of these orange marks, this is going to be, my movement's going to come in like and do this. So I lead back and not right there in that lower left corner, because that having that dark shape weighs it down a little bit. It'll be collectively darker because it's going to be mostly everything in there is going to be in shadow, but I don't want this big, heavy, dark spot. And that's something that's really important. This is going to take a few minutes to set up and dry. And that's what I want to talk to you guys about, working from photographs. You know, for me, Mother Nature has been, I've been blessed with working with some amazing artists over the years, and painting alongside amazing artists and watching how they do what they do. But, you know, truthfully, Mother Nature, if you're a landscape artist, she's the best teacher. And if you can get outside and paint from life, it's just the most informative and best way to learn, in my opinion. I'm going to just take my rag here and just kind of get a few textures going on back here. Any questions? I do. That's all I've been doing recently, and it's probably not. Yes, but I realize that I'm going to it too much, so it's time to it's time to stop, because I start relying on things like that as a crutch. For the longest time, I would only work on 8x10 and 11x14. That proportion seemed fine, and so I have to break it up. I'll have to bring in a 9x12 or something longer, you know, 24x36, or so that I'm not composing the same way all the time. Because, you know, when I've been doing this for a very long time, and so you get caught up in habits, and so you got to force yourself to break them, or I do. This is gonna, like I said, this is gonna set up and dry a little bit. Oh, you know what I want to do? I want to break up. Too much. I got to be very careful that these dry grasses don't end up right in the center of the painting. It's very close to that. So I want to make sure the weight of it stays just to the left, and that I want this kind of anchor point. There's going to be something that anchors here, here, and here to help create this, you know, vertical anchoring of the composition, and the horizontal back here. Okay, any more questions about what I've done so far? Do I have a rule? Is that so? Just what we were referencing before, getting caught up in the same thing. I was painting monochromatic underpaintings for everything I did. Everything, all my plein air work, all my studio work, and I realized it was a crutch. So I did completely away with doing no underpaintings for about a year, and just painted directly on, just so I could break the habit. With that said, no, I think what it is that I'm painting dictates to me and the feeling that I want to get. If I'm working very large, you know, 40x60 or, you know, 30x40, then I definitely will go to the local color of what the shapes are, the generalized local color of what the shapes are, or create some kind of a complementary underpainting for that. But I try, it's hard for us to not get caught up in doing the same thing over and over again, right? So no. One thing I do with the pastel underpainting, I get sometimes caught up in when I'm doing a local color underpainting like I just did, sometimes I end up going to the grade colors too soon and my underpainting colors get muddy and I mean, honestly, for me, the best things have been just to stick to the new pastels that don't have white added to them and keep those more middle values. Those have been my most successful in terms of a go-to or a regular type of pastel to use. Yeah, this blue over here, there's a blue green that I had picked up over here and I started to lay it in pretty thick. I'm going, no, because it's got some white in it and I know it's going to gray out a little bit too much, more than I wanted it to, but we'll see what happens. And so now we get to watch this dry and it becomes well, let's see what happens. Yeah. Did you? Oh no. Okay. So the topic is painting snow and how I make it glow, but there's some things that I think are important. You guys, has anybody lived in snow before? Yeah. So you guys know what shoveling it is and blowing it and having all the people come in and put the salt all over the roads and stuff like that. I've grown up in the Bay Area. You know, snow for me has always been, like I mentioned earlier, it's been something fun. And you know, you're going to Tahoe, you're going to the mountains, you're doing something fun, hiking or painting or skiing. But being familiar with what snow really is, you know, especially if you're not a plein air painter, not going out and painting from life, our photos give us a lot of great information. But they also, you've probably all heard this, they don't tell us the actual truth of what's happening out there. And particularly these HDI cameras or these cameras that we have now, they completely, you know, make the darks too dark, the lights too light. And we miss a lot of authenticity in our paintings if we're just truly relying on just the photograph. So I have a few things that forgive me for reading these, but snow appears white because the sunlight is white light, right? And so when the photo is being taken and the overall appearance of snow is white, because that's the spectrum of color that gets distributed across the snow. But snow is they're actually ice crystals, so they are not actually white, they're clear. And so the ice crystals, they're reflecting everything around it, the sky, the whatever the light source is that's around it, whether it's bushes or a human or the tail end of a goose or whatever's being reflected into it, it's bouncing color back at us. So when you're painting snow, you know, it's not white. Don't go to your white first, whether it's an oil paint. You watercolorists, yes, you do have to leave the white of the paper first. Snow it's not smooth, it's not flat. Snow is an ice crystal, which has sides to it, right? So our photos flatten snow. Our photos make snow flat generally. But there's many textures that are created with snow, depending on how deep and thick it is, you know, what it's laying on top of, how many times the snow has, you know, been melted and then thawed and then reformed again. And there's different layers of snow, just like what I was mentioning when you're walking on it, and you know, you walk in and all of a sudden you're like up to here when you know. And it's built up of texture. So when you're painting that, I like to remember that it's just not a smooth, flat, white surface. The deeper the snow is, you know, the less of the white light gets reflected into it, or and it turns blue and green, you know, like the turquoises and the deep blue, the thicker the snow is. So like when you're seeing a glacier, when it's just like been recently calved off into the water, and you can see all the beautiful blues and turquoises. And that's because the glacier's got such, deep snow within it, and the light's not traveling as far down. So it turns on the spectrum into those blues and greens. Snow's reflective of everything that's around it. Like I mentioned, the color of light and color of sky will always influence the general color harmony of, so if you have a, an overcast day, that color of the sky is going to be on the surface, reflected on the surface of the snow. And like I mentioned, photographs tend to darken the sky, and they always darken the shadows of whatever's being cast on the snow. So when you're painting from your photographs, sometimes it's really apparent when somebody's just really, really relying on their photo when their snow shadows are super, super dark. It's not that they can't be dark out in real life, but when you compare a photograph to what real life is, you see that there's a great deal of value change. So also, the sun's lower in the sky, in the wintertime, and that has a tendency to help make the overall snow plane, it doesn't get the direct sunlight on it. So you have the cast of whatever the sky color is. What's receiving, whatever's angled up towards the light source. So let's say this is the light, and I have a berm here, or the snow that's built up on the side of a tree trunk. This right here, this mound is going to be the whitest white because it's getting the most direct sunlight against it. Snow piled up against the building, depending on the angle of the sun. So those are key things to help design your painting around, instead of just painting everything white. Instead of just painting this whole thing white, just picking up these little areas of where the sunlight is hitting the side. These are my lightest lights right in here. And I kind of fudged a little bit just to help lead your eye into there. But it's my choice of where I want to put those lightest lights. Otherwise, I'm keeping everything knocked down, cooled off on that top plane. When you observe like a hole or a footprint in the snow, and there's a light, the sun's shining on it, there's always a shadow. And then within that shadow, there's the reflected light in there. So there's a great opportunity to play with color within those shadow shapes. Then whatever, like I mentioned, the lip of the snow print will be the lightest light, and then the top of the what surrounds the entire footprint or hole is a lighter value. So the lightest light is still going to generally depend on the angle of the sun. A lot of times we go to blues, because we're seeing blues and as our shadows. I went, pretty blue here for my shadows of what's going to be across the top of the snow plane there. But I will start with this, intense blue, but I'm going to neutralize that quite a bit, because I don't want, for my sake, it's not that it's right or wrong, but generally neutralizing most of those shadow shapes is helpful, because then you can come in towards the end and use more cleaner blue marks to help lead your eye through the painting as well. I intentionally make my shadows lighter in value than what the reference is giving me. I reserve my lightest lights, like I mentioned, to the end, and I'll when I get painting here, I'll share that. And for those of you who work in oil, and for me as well, and any medium, sometimes you're kind of told to not to use white, because white is such a cold color, right? So add a tiny bit of cad yellow or cad orange to warm up your lightest lights. I think those were my major notes of snow. And I'm going to see if I can speed You guys don't happen to have a hairdryer here, do you? Any questions? See, I knew I'd put you to sleep. Oh, I know what I wanted to say. Well, this is still kind of drying here. So I'll, if you guys want to sign my little book there, if anybody's interested, I'm going to put all these notes into a PDF file. So you don't have to write it down, and just send me an email and say, hey, I saw you at SWA. Can you please send me your little file? I haven't done it yet because I'll try and take a picture of what I've done to be a reminder too. But just feel free to write your name and email address. Please make your email address legible, because sometimes it's deciphering them. Thank you. Oh, yes. You know what? I have a look here. Yeah. Sorry, guys. You might want to turn the volume off so that our people in Zoom land are there any questions out in Zoom land? Okay. Are you guys asleep too?
No.
I had a question from Zoomland. That's Canada.
So there was a question. Did Zoomland have a question?
They're just saying we're wide awake and this is so great.
So somebody said they had a question. So if
I did. I had a couple questions. Can you hear me?
yes.
Okay. I just wondered what grit of paper are you using, and how if you use terpenoid, if you used rubbing alcohol, how would that have changed your painting? Like, what's the different effect between terpenoid
Yes.
rubbing
So
alcohol?
this is I work on 400 or 320. This is 320 UART grit. I like it a little bit grittier. The difference between the denatured alcohol and or rubbing alcohol, I use denatured alcohol. But the difference between the terp and the alcohol is the way it chemically reacts with the pastel pigment. Excuse me. So the terpenoid creates a little bit of an oilier effect with the brush stroke. And and that's a much more poetic thing for me, the feel of it. It's a very subtle feel. Water or distilled water or the alcohol breaks apart the pigment and sometimes will separate it from it's a little bit more crystallized, and there's not just the distribution of the pastel. The wet pastel isn't as fluid, so it's a little bit of color and then it kind of halos out. And that's been my experience with using the two different things.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's a question about why do I have to dry the pastel? That's from an oily person. I say that with love and respect. But I have to dry this, otherwise the wet pastel, when I apply a dry pastel on top of the wet, it wets my pastel and becomes sticky and gummy. And so I don't get to have that beautiful stroke that we get with the pastel sticks. I'm going to start kind of painting here a little bit, and let me find a little bit of what I'm doing here, and then I'm going to be quiet and kind of find a little bit of a rhythm. I'm obviously not going to have enough time to finish this. Are we still have about an hour left, would you say? Okay. But luckily I have some examples of how I would finish. But I just want to get a little bit of this moving for you guys to see how I will ultimately been painting a lot of water lately, and that's been when I committed to do the snow, it hadn't snowed around here yet, so I didn't have an opportunity to practice it much. So that's why I did the little one last week, just to get my practice in. I forgot what I was going to say. I had a point, believe it or not. I forgot. The one on the right, I just did that last week to remind myself what painting snow, what it takes to paint snow, how it felt. Let's see.
Comment, excellent demo, learning so much.
Oh, great. Thank you. The $20 is in the mail. Let's see. I know I've got to, so I usually creep at this stage, which makes my demos pretty boring, I think, because I don't aggressively go after. So I really find, it takes me a while to find my way, find my colors. It's right now, for me, it's what I call kind of a hunt and peck process.
So you don't create groups of pastels in different values that you keep moving around through?
I do not. When I teach my workshops, I definitely have a couple exercises that I make people do that, because I force people to do things. It's the only thing in my life I get to make sure somebody else does what I say. But no, I'm fairly confident with, what my sticks are going to do, what I want. I took a wonderful course on color theory and harmony with Skip Whitcomb, who's, I'm sorry, it's the best. Color's always been very intuitive for me. I've always enjoyed color and pairing one color next to another. That's been a large part of what I do. So I've never really studied it before, but his course has really provided a great deal of information. So it's really been an opportunity to actually choose color. Who asked the question about pre-selecting colors? Oh yeah. So yeah, so I'll paint in his class in oil and do the color boards that he asks us to do. And then I can use those color studies for my larger works if I want to. I'm starting to incorporate that process into how I work. And I'm also thinking about color differently. It's been a wonderful, excuse me, wonderful addition to well, I'll think about, an overall color harmony. It's allowed me to go into exploring, not the actual creating more of a mood than, and I've used it more for my work that's more tonal. I love to work in a more tonal way as well, where my contrasts aren't as great and my color harmony is much more a tighter color. It's, a tighter color harmony. So it'll be, so I'll pre-select, at that point in time.
And what is it you have in your hand?
So this is a box of the colors that I'm going to use. I ended up bringing, I'm going to show you guys this really quick. I should be painting, but I'm going to go to,
Put it down.
yeah. So this box was pretty much the colors that were in the painting on the far right. And these were some of the greens. So I'm still in the process of painting that. It's not a finished painting, especially when I popped it into the frame. There's a shape in that painting, the smaller one, that I don't like, that needs to be redesigned. So I don't really want to disturb these two boxes, but I thought I'd be working from them for this painting, have access to them. So that's why I'm kind of going back and forth. I want to get a little note. So I intentionally work darker first and then pull to my lights. But I need to get a little bit of this stuff established so you guys can actually see. One of the great things about the pastel is, okay, I got to remember, I don't want that right in the center. So I want the weight of this shape to be over here. And I don't want to get too locked in yet of, all the details. So many people, excuse me, get into, where are all these little uprights going to be? You get caught up in the details. We get caught up in the detail way too fast. And I want to reserve those last beautiful poetry marks, the mark making of that towards the end. So you probably won't see that until I get these. I won't get to that point with only 2 hours. Now we're going to be crawling from the dark into the light and the dark back into the light. Now I'm going to just jump ahead and get a tone down for the top plane of, I've got kind of a gentle purple that I'm going to just add to the top plane of what might be thicker snow in light. And that's probably too light. And I'm going to drop that down slightly. And I work super light at this stage. I'm not making any hard marks. Let's see, the light's coming this way. So some of these little areas of upright are going to be my brighter brights. But I do want to get the top plane of some of this movement.
What other pastels do you like to use?
I have pretty much everybody. Terry Ludwig, Unison, those two brands are my workhorses, and but I have the Rochers, Sennelier, just Diane Townsend. She makes some wonderful, great fat tirages that I love to work with. They're really big. They're like having a number 10, excuse me, oil painting brush. I'm gonna grab a little sip of water. Sorry, guys.
Great. Dance.
Well, we need some music for that. No, I'll scare people off if I do that. All right. So as this kind of berm is turning away from the sun, it starts to cool off and then as it hits kind of that ice, this is getting really stiff edge, a hard edge, and I'm not liking that. So I'm going to create a little bit of in and out movement. And that should have been green, darker green, cooler green. Like I said, I was going to play with some of this, the idea of this. So I'm thinking this ice, this ice is kind of got warm and cool temperature shifts going on because, sometimes it's thinner where the color of the water is underneath it, traveling underneath it. And I want to get a little bit of again, I'm not committing to my shapes 100% just yet. So let's say there's going to be a little bit of light like we have over here. I hope we'll get a little bit of thicker. I want this to come in front. I still have a long way right now to hit my lightest light, and I'm going to show you what that looks like just right now, because I know I'm not going to go out here yet because I want everything to help support what this is going to be. But I just want you to see how far I have to help to go to my lights, right? So you can, but I'm going to stay away from this value on anything close to this until the very end, because that's how I'm going to tell you how I want you to look at my painting. But can you see how that just jumped off the page? One thing I'll talk to you about this too. So I have this super light here, and the sun's coming from this direction and hitting. I'll make sure that in my reference photo, there's a distinct, temperature change, but this is still, there's a lot of light on there. So I'm going to do this as well. I'm going to take, just to show you earlier on how I think about this, is I'm going to make sure whatever is this little note is going to be this almost the same value as what's going on there. And now you can, that's starting to glow at the moment, right? Darn. Please excuse me. I'm so sorry.
So are you saying what helped it glow was you started with something that was really intense light, and then you built around it with not as intense, but kind of.
Right. But I brought that value out just for an explanation to share with you where I intend to go. At this stage, I would never go, I'd maybe make a note, but I wanted to illustrate to you how all the middle and dark values help to support the light. And that's the key thing I want you to take away from this 2 hours, is that if you can stay in your dark and middle values for as long as possible in your painting process, when you're painting snow and the make the snow glow, and wait for bringing in and introducing those lightest lights, it helps to create that illusion of glow. And it helps to keep it where you want it versus getting white all the way out here and all the way out here and all the way out here. So then my eye is going like this. And we want everything to, just like how I organize this. I could have brought, light sparkles all on down here. But I really wanted this to be the center of interest, and I wanted our eye to move back into space here. And so I made sure all these light notes didn't show up until the very end of the painting process. And even my lightest sparkles on here are not as light in value as here, because this is all in the shadow. Again, similar situation here, that movement coming up into the light, the shadows being cast across. But I was interested in the breaking up of the rhythms of those shadows, and how could I, if I could be successful in creating the illusion of a shadow on the top plane of that snow. That was fun to play with. Okay, I need to jump into this a little bit. Like I said, I work dark to light generally. Get a little bit of a gray note going on back here, a little neutral, have it sit in the background. I also generally, I've noticed, I also generally work from cools to warms. My warms have a tendency to come in later on in the painting process as well. And I don't know why that is. It just happens to be when I'm demonstrating, or when I'm actually paying attention to what I'm doing. That sounds weird. When I'm cognizant of what I'm doing versus just painting, I realize that's been something that I regularly do. I want to get this movement down in here, but this is going to be in shadow. So these are going to be a little bit darker, whatever it is. Just a shape, movement. And I don't want to get too elaborate with what it is. I'm looking for the rhythm and the movement.
Then we have a question. How is your paper mounted?
It's dry mounted to an acid-free foam core. If I'm working larger than 24 by 36, I have it dry mounted to gator board. So I've got, instead of having this big old blob here, can you see how I've moved our eye into the picture? All right. Let's play. Let's play. That was a Rocher pastel. That's, you heard how sandy that sounded. They have, I don't know what they use, but there's a lot more grit in the Rocher pastels, as the Diane Townsend tirages, the big thick ones. They have more pumice in them. The Terry Ludwigs and the Unison have less, but they're all equally beautiful and wonderful to use. I want to get a little bit of a deeper blue in that water, just to help emphasize that the water is darker in value than the ice. And notice I'm going right over top of that upright. I want that to be organic. I don't want it to feel like it's stiff and heavily placed in there. So I'll go over it. And then I'll come back in. So it's a push and pull kind of situation here. And I want maybe this one a little bit thicker. As we travel back in space, things get smaller and smaller. Our shapes get larger as we come forward. So I got to think about that as well. Get a little bit of warmth over in here too. I don't like how these three fingers are the same, so I'm gonna have to modify that. I need a warmer green for this ice. That's going to be shown it. I designed that so you guys would stay awake. These are, maybe I open that up. Any questions? Not very. Not today. It normally would probably be up on one side, or so it's more of a net. Like if I have one of my plein air studies, it would be here, and then my monitor's here. Yes, yeah. But it's behind me, and I feel kind of, I don't do a whole lot of demos, so I'm nervous. So there was 3 fingers. I call them worms. Sometimes when I'm teaching my workshop, I go, you got a worm crawling on the top of your mountain. People aren't really happy when I call it that, but that's what they look like. And I do it for my own work. So I'm not trying to be mean, but there was 3 equal width shapes and almost the same length here. And they were too repetitive, too much the same. Who asked that? Yeah, and it wasn't pleasing to me. I want a more organic rhythm to it. And part of the problem is because, I didn't plan it out, but that's just not how I do it. Paul Crowder would say, well, those shapes wouldn't be rhythmic if you'd already done your sketch, your thumbnail. Love you, Polly. All right. Let me get to a little bit of this snow. So like I mentioned, I want to make sure that this top plane of the snow is receiving light from the sky. So there's in my photo reference, there's clearly, some trees that are casting those shadows. I don't want to be as deliberate as that. I don't really want to know what my shadows are in here versus the one on the far right. I specifically wanted that. Here, I just want it to be, who knows what's creating that light. And remember, I didn't want to go out here too far to the edge. I do want the direction of that sun, of the light, but I still want to feel this movement coming in. See how I do that? To me, that's important because I still want the opportunity to tell you where to go. Ha ha ha.
You're making that artistic choice because you don't have to resting too long in that area.
Right. And like, when they talk about center of interest or your, some people design by 3 areas of center of interest. For my situation, I really want this area to be where your eye goes, just like I told you where to go there in that top one. And sometimes it's about the movement all the way through the painting. I still want access in and out, but I do want a prima ballerina. Yes.
So what you're storing in the painting, it's the light there?
It's the light,
movement?
the light
Okay.
shining on these reeds,
Yes.
and you know, and all the beautiful play, the play of light.
Absolutely.
Yeah, nothing more, nothing more than that. Okay. I'm going to keep the snowbanks a little bit warmer in the back here. That's too light still. Because there's more stuff back here that's kind of bouncing around back there. And so I'm going to kind of keep it slightly warmer in value. Let's see. It's one of my favorite colors, and I don't know what it is, who manufactured it. It's almost gone. I think it's a Rocher pastel. I like that warmth back there though.
The color itself is green.
It's a beautiful burnt sienna. It's like, but it's like super rich, like it's a transparent burnt sienna color. It's gorgeous. I'm gonna have to. Gotta move along, Kimmy. So I think of this, so much of this as playing with temperature. You know, where's the light hitting someplace? And then how much color can I actually put into it and still have it be, you know, believable of what it is. So it's just, for me, it's finding the warm and cool colors to vibrate in that same value. We want to hit. So this all looks like shadow with that note, but right now that looks like that's in shadow, right? So we know that there's opportunity to come back in with some lighter lights in this area. So this may very well be dark enough. Yes. Yeah, a little bit of a pinky note here. And I might even push that a little bit more. Play with that temperature shift. I don't know if people in Zoomland can have access to the warm and cools that are coming down on here. Now I can go ahead and push this value in the shadow shape, but I don't want to go super bright, you know, dark blue. I do want to modify and gray that down just a hair. So I'm going to come in with a little bit of a purple a little bit more neutral, not quite as bright. With the blue. I lied. Normally I'd be doing this. I'm looking to see what to see it backwards in the mirror. Okay. Yeah.
The blue is brighter. Yeah.
There definitely are more variety of warms and cools going on here. I soften some of these edges so they sit back. Again, I wouldn't be going to these lightest lights right now. There's just not enough information going on down here. I don't have my colors all ironed out yet, but just for the sake of a demo, we're gonna hit it. Remember the stuff that's getting hit, where the sun's kind of hitting the lip of this. There's some upright stuff here that I'll put in. Notice I'm not saying grasses, I'm saying stuff. So I'm trying to keep from thinking, putting a label or a name to it. See. Again, I would not be doing this. Am I sounding like a broken record? That got way too. No. I've also been doing a lot in the studio to create some of my textures. This is something new for me. So right now, this is all very even, my strokes. So I'll come in and soften a little bit of this. Then I've been taking my baby wipes and creating these interesting textures that helps create a little bit more of an organic.
Almost like stumbling.
It is, but it will dry. So it's very subtle. Sometimes I wish it would stay with the textures, but it'll dry. You'll see it dry. I'm jumping all over the place. I hope you guys don't mind.
Done, what you do a fixative on it?
So I generally, if I get too much pastel in any one area right now, or I'll fix it during the process. Yeah.
Will that change the colors?
Yes.
Frustrating thing about
Yes,
pastel.
but so it's not that frustrating, I mean, really. Unless you're painting white on white on white on white, you know, it's not going to disturb it that much. And if you've got a strong value pattern going
I don't know,
on,
just for me, it's
strong
just like-
design,
Saw
yeah.
that, you know?
Well, that's why it's a very individual thing. Plus, it's horribly toxic. So, you know, but I've been doing it since I was a baby. I've been spraying fixative since I was 15. That's why I'm so really weird. I mean, yeah, that's right. And the reason I spray it is because I like the high I get afterwards. Oh, wait, that's on camera. I'm kidding. Yeah, poor Ellen. She's had to, I have to, when we're out painting together, I'll go, I'm going to spray. She's like, fine. And I spray, and then I go, and then she's like, are you done yet? I know, I do not. Boy, that's out there forever now, huh? Say that again about casing?
You try the casing, same thing?
No. Mm-mm.
What is it? Non-toxic?
Oh,
Casing?
the Spectrafix. I have. It takes a long time to dry. I'm a creature of habit. It's like when I go to a restaurant and I find something that I love that they've made, that's usually my go-to. So, you know, once I find something that works for me, and I've tried all different types of fixatives. And frankly, I'm just used to the smell of Krylon workable fixative. So the other ones make me feel nauseous, and I know how bad it is. So I'll put, I'm in my studio, I have an artist air purifier, which is a big box that's tied to a HEPA filter, and it draws the dust down, and I have that turned on high whenever I'm going to spray. I do wear a mask, and one of the, you know, COVID did make me a lot more comfortable wearing a mask in the studio. So if I'm coming in and brushing a whole bunch of stuff off, I know I'm putting my mask on, and or if I'm spraying, putting the mask on. We're supposed to take it outside, but I'll spray, turn the HEPA filter on, spray, and then go get some tea or something like that.
You're still alive.
Well, yeah, but I've had, you know, we've lost some wonderful pastel painters to, you know, lung disease. So it's something to be very cognizant of. Yeah, I do not take that lightly, actually. And I was being too cavalier, you know, for many, many years in my studio with that. So, you said a question?
Are baby wipes archival?
My baby's still alive, so I don't know, does that count? Probably not. I don't know. That's an interesting question. Yeah, probably not. So I'm just softening all these edges that are popping out to me. We need a little bit more of a situation going on here with a little bit more of a flat plane of this. Yeah, I didn't, so I brought in those of you in Zoom land, this was a real bright yellow that I brought off, and it was way too warm. I didn't like that. So I'm going to cool that note off. See, that's already better for me. And, you know, again, I'm still trying to find my rhythm and pattern because I'm not a planner. So there's a lot of time spent just trying to find my shapes. You know, I've got my general overall shapes in. But how do I want the viewer to see, to look through this? And I still want this type of movement. But I'm just slow to build this stuff up. Let's see. Which kind of doesn't make me a really good demonstrator, I don't think.
So where do you see that texturing in the? Very textured.
Oh, so that's the baby wipes. Those were helpful in that. And
From here.
well, I'd say thank you, but no. Thank you. Pastels can be beautiful too. No, I know, I'm giving you a bad time. Yeah, so what I'm not able to do here is to, you know, the blessing that we all have is that we do step up to this easel, right? And we get to turn the world away, each one of us. We turn the world away and we create our own world. And when I liken myself to, I'm very much an emotional painter. So when I'm painting, I get in, I mentioned earlier, I get into, I want to know, am I going to fall through this? Oh yeah. You know, if I stepped on that, and that's what I start thinking about. You know, what's the depth going? How thick is this? How much of this is, how thin is this ice going to be? And those are the things when, you know, when you're by yourself and what your brain is thinking about. And that's what I do. And we're so lucky to be able to, you know, get into that headspace where we're creating our own journey, you know, two-dimensionally. It's pretty cool.
You can make it, give the appearance of being thinner by making it more faded than areas that were solid.
So I created all that by just like what I'm starting to build up here. It's all about very subtle temperature shifts. It's deciding, you know, what are all these movements. You know, the ice, like I mentioned, it thaws and then it reforms and it creates all these different textures and depths. And this is what I've been exploring in a lot of my work recently. I've just did another large painting, a really 24 by 24 piece. That's all about this cliff face. And I got so caught up in the textures. And that's something that's changing in my work right now is I'm getting super caught up in the minutia of it, of what it feels like. This big cliff face, it's from Torrey Pines, and it's this beautiful sandstone, this cliff that goes like this, and it's all beautiful light up here with the Torrey Pines, the light dragging through it. But what I got caught up is the temperature shifts and all the different abstract little shapes that the dirt was making, and that's what I'm getting caught up in here, and trying to create, you know, these. I don't know if you have the. Sorry, guys. You know, these more quieter passages of the thicker pastel, but I want all this texture to read as what it is, the feel of it. Like you could feel like you're gonna crush right through that ice if you stepped on it. And that's kind of getting a little probably TMI for you guys. But that's what and this is how I start that. So when I brought out the baby wipe to start, you know, it's a push-pull, a constant push-pull for me. It's you know, nothing up here is resolved yet. I've got my general movement here, but I'll start coming in, you know, eventually when I can concentrate and, you know, what do these shapes look like? What is this movement? And how can it be really organic? One of my painting heroes is one of them is Clyde Aspavig, and he and his beautiful wife have coined the term land snorkeling. And, you know, when you're snorkeling, you're in the sea and you're seeing all this beautiful stuff and you're up close. Well, they land snorkel, you know, in fields and out in the wilderness. And when they go on their hikes and walks, they're looking down here and seeing the beauty that Mother Nature provides. And I've kind of likened been getting more into that feel, a lot of more intimate paintings than the big grandeur of, you know, the entire Yosemite Valley. You know, maybe I'll just taken a slice of the river, the Merced River that runs through that, or whatever. So it's, I forgot. I'm sorry if I just. Okay, good. I forgot what the question was. That's my crazy brain. But I still have, you know, I've gone to this lighter warm, but I've got a little bit of a cooler light. I want to play with the warms and cools. But for me, this right now, because I don't have a lot of this resolves, is feeling very uncomfortable. So it's, for me, it's just a lot of, you know, finding what the movement is, you know, it's searching for it and playing with these. I love playing with, like, I just picked this up willy-nilly and it's got this warm, it's a warm green compared to this. But if I put this up next to a yellow green, it's a super cool green. And so it's, for me, it's feeling like, it's feeling like that ice where you can see a little bit of the depth of the water running underneath it. It's refracting some of the color that's underneath it, yet it's cooler than, because it's on top and it's forming the crystals on top. So that was a really nice note to help create that. And I want to make sure that shape remains darker in value. The rock here on that, when you see the rock on the one that you can see its reflection here in the water. So I want to make sure I don't put that light of a reflection in the water, unless I can put a shape up here that's that light, and then I could probably, maybe let's do that. Give it a reason for being. So we're going to move this way through here, and then we'll have this be right in here, be our exit point out of the painting. And let's go a little bit warmer, as if there's light back there. It's too warm. Where do we want to go with that? Maybe it's not. Maybe it needs to be. See, for me, it's just like a hunt and peck. Maybe it needs to be. A little bit of a cooler note dragged over top of it. Send it back. So now the temperature is a little too close to the ice. But if we bring some more warmth that I'm seeing out here. Now remember, this is what's in the background, but right now it's coming forward, right? So what I'm going to need to do is, it's this constant push-pull for me. So now I'm going to need to reintroduce a darker color over top of these marks. I just want to soften some of these edges a little bit. But the fabulous thing about pastel is that you have this opportunity to just glaze a color over top of the other one, and the eye optically mixes it. Where with oil, unless you're working, you know, when you're working alla prima, it's pretty much just that wet on wet, and so it's harder to get that drag of a. So when you dry brush oil paint or the acrylic on top, you can get this effect beautifully. Let's see. I want to keep it Okay. But when I start to put something darker in front of it, the edge, it'll start to sit back in the picture plane. Whatever this stuff is, I don't know what it is yet. I just want to think about the movement. I'm gonna have to drop that into what's going on back here. Kind of like this, it's a darker corner in the photo. And I like to work all over. So you can see how that's just starting to drop back a little bit more. It probably needs to have maybe this. I don't know yet. Okay, but the whole reason putting that in was so that I could create a little bit of that warmth on the top plane of what's being reflected of the water. So we get a little bit of this going on. So one of my artists that I go to study for this movement in water is a Norwegian artist by the name of Fritz Thaulow, Thaulow. The way he creates the ripples through rivers, and he's the late 1800s. It's just fabulous to study how he creates and designs the water. And what I've learned through studying his work is, again, something's changing in the way I approach my painting right now. I feel like I'm becoming more a physical part of that. I can't even formulate this idea yet. But I'm becoming, when I'm painting this, I actually can feel like the water. I can feel like it running between my legs or something like that when I'm painting. It's very different. It's like I could feel when I was painting the one that I was talking about earlier, that cliff face where the wind and water and stuff have just piles of the sandstone have ripped away, and it's left all these little crevices and stuff like that. I feel like if I hit it too hard, it's gonna fall away. It's like I'm feeling, I can't even explain it. And it's very, very different than it's a very different approach to what I'm doing. And I'm just in the middle of finding that for myself and what that means. And it was probably when I first started, I did a series of paintings of snow and water about 2 years ago. And I think was kind of the start of it. And it's not necessarily when I'm working plein air. I'm out there for a reason, to, build my muscle memory, capture what that moment in time is, because I think that information is so very important to bring back into the studio for me as a landscape artist. Tremendously important. And but when I'm in the studio, it's different now. It's almost like I can't even formulate words. I'm sorry. I don't know what it is yet. That's not very helpful to anybody. Okay. That's too dark. And to get into that headspace of where I feel like my feet are getting wet, it's not here.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Your archival foam board, how thick is that? Is it like a quarter, an eighth? What you have your paper drying down to?
It's 3/16.
3/16.
Yeah, the acid-free foam core.
Okay. And where do you get that done at?
Well, hmm, um, I made friends with a local, just at a frame shop, I guess.
Frame shop.
Yeah, find a framer that's willing. I made friends. Actually, her name's Vonna Long, and we have a local frame shop here called Dark Horse Framing, and she taught me how to frame way back when I was in college. I worked at a place called Aaron Brothers, and she was the one who taught me how to frame, and we reconnected, years later, and she'd opened up her own frame shop. And so if you can become friends with your, I would send clients to her or collectors to her to frame my work. I do all my own framing though, because it is so expensive to have others do that.
Right.
But and she I'm so grateful. It gave me a wonderful deal. I'd bring in full sheets of UArt, which is 27 by 40, and I'd bring in all my own either gator board or foam core, and I'd bring 10 in at a time, and I'd just set it there and let her mount it whenever it was convenient for her or whoever's working there. And sometimes I would just ask if I could use the mounts or the mount press myself, and she allowed me to come in and mount it myself.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good to know.
Yeah.
You always use museum glass?
I always use museum glass. I started back when my very first plein air event that I was involved in was back in 2004. I was 6 months pregnant with my son, and I made a conscious decision, even though it was, it's expensive, but it was worth it. I intentionally framed without a mat, and I popped it in with the museum glass so that nobody would know. And all the plein air events that I did, people would walk by, outdoors, and then, they come in and check out my work, and then they'd get up, their nose would be up this close to it, and they go, "Oh, why do you have glass on your oil painting?" And that would be a great reason, to explain what the pastel medium, because there wasn't a whole lot of us out there. Clark Mitchell, Lorenzo Chavez, Richard McDaniel. There were that. I mean, I'm probably forgetting a couple other folks' name, but it was not a whole lot of pastel painters out there, and everybody was not. I'm not saying them, but the watercolors were using mats, and people had a preconceived idea about what that work under glass was less than. And so the museum glass, if you can afford it, it's worth every single penny, because people can actually see your work. Okay, I'll get off my soapbox.
We got like 5 minutes.
Oh my gosh. Any other question? I mean, I pretty much illustrated. I still have, I'll just hit a couple. You can see how that really starts to glow. I would do this, out here, and then find the edge where the sun's coming from this direction. I'd find the couple little areas, the sun's, and I would be changing the temperature, but I just want you to see the values of it.
Is that pure white?
Yeah, that's pretty. It has a tinge of it's a warm white. I'm gonna go to a little bit of a warmer pink. I will do that, yes. And what I'll try and do is get this done pretty quickly. And then if, for those of you who wanted the PDF of my tips for painting snow, I'll get that out to you. And that's for people in Zoom land too. If you want to shoot me an email, if you're interested in receiving my tips, I'm more than happy to. You can either go to my website and just share your email and name with me. I'd appreciate it.
Could you include this finished picture in with the tips?
Yeah, that's what I'll work on this weekend because, yeah, I'll get it to it, and it'll probably be an iPhone photograph that will make it, blow it out. It'll be high def. Even when you take it off high def, it's high def. But you'll get a better idea of this being brought a little bit more to completion than where I have it at today.
Every day?
I'm a cyclic painter, and I think it's important to understand how what your rhythm is. And my particular rhythm is I'll be in quite of a production mode if I have shows or galleries work to do. And then sometimes it's just, it'll be a week I'll go by and I haven't painted. Then I'm working on, writing up my blog post or doing emails or marketing, that kind of thing, social media. So and when you're painting, so every 2 years, Ellen and I we're very blessed to be in a gallery called Reeser Fine Art in Carmel, and he just retired 2 months in November, and we're now blessed to be in a new space down in Carmel called Carmel Fine Art. But with Jim Reeser, I would every 2 years create 25 to 30 paintings for a show. And so right now, this time I would be knee deep in getting down to Carmel, Monterey, all that area to paint. And so the next 6 months would be just spent either going out and painting or working on the paintings for the show. And so I feel kind of at a loss. I've felt from November on, which is usually when I would start it, working towards that. And there would be 25 to 30 paintings, but I would paint probably 35 to 40 major paintings so that we could cull out, what we wanted to have for the show. And so right now I feel kind of lost, which is it was really great to have this demonstration coming up because it got me in the studio thinking about painting snow. And now that we finally got some in the Sierras, it'll be great to get up there and paint. Just a quick thing, there's brochures from my past solo shows with Jim that you guys are welcome to take with you that are on the thing. There's 2 magazines. I was very, very blessed and fortunate to receive the cover of Plein Air magazine with this painting on it. And you can see a copy of it there. And then I also had one of my horse paintings on the winter issue of the Pastel Journal. And there's 2 copies there. If you want to, and this is Zoomland too, if you email me, I'll be happy to send you PDF files. In the Plein Air magazine, I actually wrote an article for them, and then John Parks did a beautiful article on my work in the Pastel Journal, and so I'm grateful to the editors for picking my paintings for the cover. That's pretty dang amazing. So help yourself. Like I said, make a note in my book, give me your name and your email address, and I'll send all that information out to you as soon as I get it gathered. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. You're a rock star. Thank you, people in
Thank you so much.
Zoomland.
Wonderful.
Thank you. I'm very grateful to you all for being here.
Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Bye
That sounded
bye.
like Jan.
Very inspiring.
Thank you.
That
I don't
wasn't
know
me, but I'm
oh.
here, Kim.